Superintendent.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the Wareham School Committee, May 4th, 2023, to order. The first item on this meeting agenda is reorganization of the school committee. And I would like to start with the role of the chair of the committee.
Could I just interrupt you for a second?
Sure can.
Sorry. Could we just wait for Jeff to do that? I think
We could.
we should.
So in the interim, do you want to say the pledge? We could say the pledge.
Sure. Yeah.
And then announce that we're being recorded by WCTV.
And Jamie Wixton.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So as previously said, we are being recorded by WCTV and by Jamie Wixton. All right, so
So you get to entertain us, Dr. DeAndrea, until Mr. Sweat arrives.
well, it is May the 4th, so may the 4th be with you. We'll go watch some
also
Star
with
Wars
you.
when we get home.
I was going to say.
We could do good news. Yeah, that's a good idea. Do you want to do public participation? Or would you like to just go right to good news?
Your
But
prerogative as
okay,
the
I'm
acting chair, Dr.
Okay,
DeAndrea.
so we'll start with good news. Does anyone have any good news they'd like to share? Yes?
I just want to say thank you to all the voters who came out on Tuesday to vote in the election. Happy to be back on the school committee.
I would agree. I'm happy that there's two pro-educators back on the committee.
Yes.
Congratulations to
Thank you
Joyce
very
and Kevin.
much.
Yes,
Thank you.
congratulations and welcome back.
Thanks.
Thank you for your service, and welcome, Mr. Sweat. Okay, just in time. Our first item on the agenda is reorganization, and we will start with the chair of the committee. And so I ask if there is a motion to nominate a member to serve as the chair.
I'd like to nominate Kevin to continue his role as chair. I feel that he's done an excellent job, and with his recent reelection, I think he will continue to do an excellent job.
Seconded.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to say I'm happy. Don't worry, I'm gonna vote. I just want to say that I think it's a great idea. I think as chair, your first year, you learn a lot, and so second year, it just makes a lot of sense for Kevin to continue as our chair for many reasons.
So now I have no excuses.
One of the reasons, yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
You have a mandate.
Well, our next order of business then, and thank you for your vote of confidence. I really appreciate it. Next order of business is to elect the vice chair. Do I have any nominations for vice chair? Joyce?
I'd like to nominate Jeff Sweat to remain in that role as vice chair.
Second.
I would encourage that as well. Thank you, and thank you for the work that Jeff has done on a variety of committees, and especially the budget subcommittee. All right, so we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? You have a mandate. Do I have a motion for the position of secretary? April?
I'd like to make a motion for Joyce to continue as secretary as well.
Seconded.
All right. Again, I would encourage that as well. That sounds good to me. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 500. All right, the old gang is back together again. Next up is the payment procedure appointment. So once again, this is a procedural vote. We have the handout for payment procedures. It says the school committee shall annually appoint one of its members, the chair, and two alternate members, the vice chair and secretary respectively, to sign the weekly bill warrant. So I'd like to just separate these, and we'll have a vote on that. Do I have a motion to accept that as read?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500. And then the payroll warrant designee and alternate, and this one's important also because I can't sign every other payroll because of the relative in the district. I can sign some of them, however. So once again, it says the school committee shall annually appoint one of its member and 2 alternate members to sign the weekly payroll. What we've done in the past is have the chair and the vice chair and the secretary in no particular order necessarily. So can I have a motion to
So moved.
keep it that way?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, 500. All right, next up, we have public participation. Does any member of the public want to address the committee? Seeing none, we'll skip down, no, to student representative report. No student rep tonight, Mr. Palladino?
I think he's at a track event.
Okay,
I don't think he's going to be able to be there.
okay. So we will have the 2024 prom venue vote.
So I would like to introduce you to our class officers and advisor. We have on my left, your right, Eliza Huff, who is the secretary. Kylie Sullivan, you may recognize her. She's been to school committee before, and she is a representative of the class. And I have Christine Thomas, our math teacher, who is the class advisor, and I am going to turn it over to them.
Hello, we're here to talk about our prom venue, which is Rachel's Lakeside in Dartmouth. The date will be Saturday, May 11th, 2024, from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. It's about 23 miles, so a 30-minute drive from here, and it holds 210 people. Anything else?
I think was that it?
And just for your reference, this will be, I've been to 3 proms there at Wareham High School, so they do a great job. And for those of you that may not be familiar with the location, it's across the street from the old Lincoln Park, if you remember that, if you're old enough to remember that.
Apparently I
Some of
am.
us
so-
are. All right, so they are here to answer any questions you may have, so please feel free to ask our officers any questions you may have.
April?
I know that the past few proms have mostly, with the exception of the COVID, having to have an outdoor space, have been at the same place. What made you choose this over where the prom's been held previously?
It's really pretty. It's pretty. It's the Lakeside, and you were showing me some pictures of the venue. You visited it yourself, and it is a nice venue.
Thank you.
Joyce?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for pointing out that it's only a 30-minute ride down the highway, which, as a parent, that's important to me. So I hope you have a great time.
Thank you.
Jeff?
You'll understand why I'm not asking you the question. How many proms would you say you've been to, Mr. Palladino?
I have been to approximately 45 proms,
Okay.
Is that including in high school?
not including what I so we want to add those in too. All right, 47.
There we go.
To 14.
I remember Lincoln Park. I'm not that young, but
With great appreciation for that number, and that it doesn't reflect your age, of course, aside from the student body itself, which has a huge impact on the atmosphere, the culture, et cetera, how much of a difference do you think the venue makes? And have we ever made a mistake with respect to the venue?
well, first of all, I just want to tell you that this is not an easy job for these officers. Here's why. They have to be within 45 minutes. These are my rules, okay?
Oh.
All right, they have to be within 45 minutes of the school for kind of the reason that Joyce was inferring
Doesn't
to.
sound very democratic.
I understand that, but I want to make sure kids are safe. And it has to be on a Saturday, okay? So I remember when I was an assistant principal, we had the senior prom was on a Tuesday. So picture this, Tuesday at 11 o'clock, half the school is gone. Wednesday, until 11 a.m., half the school isn't there. So they have a very tough job to do because the venues for Saturday nights, they want weddings because there will be a bar that will be open, and that's where they make their money. So it's very difficult for them to do that. So to answer your question in regards to, oftentimes there are not a lot of options. They have it down to there are 3 venues that will allow us to have that because they didn't find a wedding for that night.
Wow.
So there's not a ton of options, and they come to me, can't we just have it on Friday night? No, we cannot have it on Friday night. And I think it's nicer for the families as well, because when you have a promenade starting at 4 o'clock and you have parents that work in the city, it can be tough to get back and see your kid off to the prom, and then you've got those people having to take half day. So Saturday is a much nicer, the tone of school is much better on Friday. We've had proms, I can tell you pretty much every venue south of Boston, from Lombardo's all the way down to Hyannis and Falmouth and west to Dartmouth and LeBaron Hills and Lakeville. We've done them all. I think the one that I would say was tough was LeBaron Hills at the time, because it really only housed, they said 110, we had 100, and it was really tight. Fortunately, it was a nice day, and we were able to open up the balcony. But we've had some great venues, honestly. That was the only one that I can think of that was really, I was saying to the advisor, this is really tough. The dance floor is small, the venue's small. From what I understand, they've added an addition, and that isn't the case anymore. But that was probably 12 years ago, and it was pretty tight. But we've always had great venues, and I always tell people, if you're getting married, I can tell you about any place south of Boston that would be a home for a wedding reception. There's really some great places out there, and they all do a really nice job. That was the only one that I thought we could have done better.
I happen to be on the board and treasurer of an organization that does weddings, specifically the Mattapoisett Y, which is on the water. If you ever have a problem getting a venue, I think it's gorgeous. You need approximately 200 or something.
We like to
Capacity?
have at least 150, seating for 150. We usually like low 100s for ticket sales, but we like to say 150 just in case there are a lot of outside guests that are invited. But it's that's kind of our threshold. We don't need quite 200 yet, but
Okay.
maybe down the road.
Bottom line is, if you ever have a problem, let me know.
I will keep that in mind. Thank you, sir.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Oh, I'm sorry, Brennan.
Well, I was just going to say, not to toot my own horn, but I went to 14 proms back when I was in school. I just kept getting asked. And I've been to that, Rachel's, you said? It's a beautiful place. You guys have a great
Yeah.
time. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. So good luck. Have fun.
Thank you.
So do I have a motion to accept the prom venue of Rachel's?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500. Congratulations, good work.
Thank you.
Good luck the rest of the year.
Time. Oh, it's good. Working on a poster right now.
Yes.
The advisor was just appointed.
All right, next up, we have our handbook presentations. We'll start with the Wareham Elementary School.
Where is that one?
Is that we're supposed to do?
He has to do senior privileges.
Senior privs.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss that?
Yeah, it's
Oh my God,
underneath the
We just
prom.
made you chair again.
I'm sorry, Mr. Palladino.
I thought we decided not to have them.
Well,
That's Ms. Bakayakis. Yeah, Scott, we've got to do senior privileges annual vote. Oh. So you may want to, yep, I'm guessing there may be a question or two.
You guys all love those.
So we have,
I thought it was one vote. We got everything approved.
we have the senior privileges policy in our packet. Do we have any questions or comments? April?
Well, I just want to say that the Policy Review Committee voted to continue the policy as written and as has been enforced over the last few years.
Okay. Anyone else? Then do I have a motion to accept these, to participate with senior privileges going forward?
So moved.
Seconded.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
to
Abstained?
keep, wait,
Oh.
to keep up with history.
Opposed?
No, I won't bore everyone with my reasons. I think you all know, so yes.
So 4-1-0.
Thank you.
My son loves them.
Now, Dr. Chandler, thank you. We'll go with the Wareham Elementary School handbook.
Good evening, school committee. It's a pleasure to be here with you again this evening. First off, I want to share with the Wareham Elementary School Handbook. A lot of work has been done with this handbook over the years, from Principal Siemens to the principals before me. We continue to add and try to improve each year this handbook, along with our student council and our school council. This year, we have a few changes, and I'd like to go through them. Some are just basic changes, and others are a little bit more in-depth. So the school council brought to my attention, a couple of my school council members are actually staff members who also work with our dismissal process, and I also have parents on the school council who addressed some concerns. So beginning with page 1, it reads, we're changing the parent legal guardian will always be contacted first in case of emergency. I know that sounds kind of common sense, but right now in Power School, our emergency contacts are emergency contacts. So when we go onto that page, there's contacts in there that may be cousins, friends. So we just want to make sure that the family is contacted first. And then we go to page 3 and just changing the mission statement. Page 7, as we know, school committee, that we did change the entrance age, so we are adding that piece to our handbook. And then page 12, this came about the school council because one member of the school council, as I said, does dismissals. And we did not have in our handbook that a picture ID was required. And at the elementary setting, we do ask for a picture ID every day. So we thought it would behoove us to make sure that that was in the handbook, that yes, please bring a picture ID with you. We need to know who you are in order to dismiss a child. I also put at the end, emergency situations will refer to the principal or their designee in case I am unavailable. The next section is about discipline. As you can see, there's a little change here, and this is to change because of the 37H law that came into place, where principals, we also have to show that we have done our due diligence before suspension, before we look to consequences, that we're proactive in our approach to discipline. So I added the following statement: students with behavioral challenges are supported by our staff through targeted instruction and interventions to teach students the skills necessary to aid in their academic and social success at school. As I went through this part of our handbook, I noticed through our discipline actions that it was very, it just had a bit of a negative connotation, and in the elementary setting, it's an opportunity for children to learn. We make mistakes when we're young, and our approach to social emotional learning is proactive, and I don't think we advertise that enough. So here I put in the I asked the assistant principals along with the support services about all of the opportunities that we provide for our students, not just the negative, but the opportunities. When we make a mistake, this is what we say every day: we fix it. So what do we do to fix it? So this is a list here that the assistant principals, and I thank them, along with our support staff, created. I will make it more uniformed. I do see that there's capitals that I need to make it uniform, so thank you. But I will do that. But this is just some of the proactive interventions that take place at the elementary setting, that are in behavior plans, that are in IEPs, that are in just our local implementation plans, that we do to work to improve the behaviors and to improve our social emotional lens. So I added that there. I also, it's fun, when you really take a close look at it, we always had as an infraction counseling under A, B, C, and D in all of those levels, and I didn't think counseling was an infraction, so we removed that piece of it. And those are the major changes to the elementary handbook. We will add that 37H part to the handbook. We've just got to do some editing there, and I know that Ms. Siemens will speak to that at the district level as well. And of course, now that we know who will be the chair and vice chair and secretary of the school committee, we will make those changes as necessary through the summer. So I'm happy to take any of your questions at this time.
Joyce?
I did have a question about the ID at dismissal, because I knew you were already, so it's something you
Yes.
already do, and you were just. so
It was
that's
just brought to our attention, and that's what I said. I said, we've done this work every year with this handbook, every year for years and years, and we work through it, and then something else comes up, and we're like, oh, well, we do this. We add so it was brought to our attention, and then, so now we've put it in.
It's funny how a different set of eyes just.
Just a different,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. How do you distribute the handbook? Is it in hard copy or?
It's electronically we did this year. We had done it 21, 22 hard copy. I was actually reflecting on that today, and I feel like we're going to go back to print. I'd like to print it. I think that it in the hands of families, it just makes sense. And I know that everything's online, and I know we want to be green electronically, but I use a hard copy, so if I'm using a hard copy, then I think that our families and others may benefit from it as well. So I was thinking about that. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, I get everything electronically, but not everyone does. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to do it
Yeah.
either way,
I-
whichever they prefer. I don't know
I
how
think
you would
that-
actually make that.
Well, I mean, I think that we can make, a couple hundred, copies for availability.
So if they wished to get it that way.
I think that would make sense.
April?
Do the parents still have to sign that they acknowledge that they were in receipt of the handbook? And how
Yes.
does that work if it's done electronically?
Yes, so it goes through the registration process, and this past year, it does go through our registration process. Every year, we have to complete a set of forms.
Oh, I
So
remember.
in that set of, forms, they check that they have acknowledged that they are in receipt of it online. And that's what we did this past year. Traditionally, before then, it was a small slip of piece of paper that goes into the handbook that they would pull out and return.
This will be the first September in 18 years that I don't have to do that.
But I will say, Ms. Rossi, I do like the electronic version of them, of the
Does it save
families
to their
clicking.
Power School? Is that where it goes?
Yes,
That's
Yes.
great.
So-
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
And just in composing the handbook and the changes, so the school council looks at it, or do you have another committee? Or like?
No, I have the school council, and then I do, and that's all I have, is the school council that reviews it and then once the school council brought this to my attention, and we talked, and I looked through the discipline, that's of course when I went through the assistant principals and guidance just for the disciplinary piece of it.
Thank you. All right, Jeff?
I completely agree. I think it should be available in hard copy on request. But to keep it as green as possible, I think it should only be on request.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I'm not saying
No,
you
I
have
think
to.
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Swat.
Okay. So I have a 100,000-foot question, and it's not just for you. I will be asking all the principals and representatives the same question. And as a prelude to that question, does DESE have any problems with our discipline, with the discipline of our students in the elementary school?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well,
No,
you would be aware of it.
no,
And-
no.
Okay, because over the years, we have been occasionally, I don't know if the correct word is cited, but cited for the nature of the students who are disciplined,
Yes.
the demographics of the students who are disciplined. So the question that comes to mind is, do you feel that the enforcement of the discipline and breaking of rules, et cetera, at the elementary school is blind?
I feel that elementary students need the opportunity to learn right from wrong. I feel that disciplinary sanctions are not understood by young children in the way that they are from middle school and high school. It does,
That does not answer my question.
okay, so repeat it again for me.
does the demographics,
Oh.
do the demographics of the student play any role in the discipline of students?
I should hope, no,
No.
no, no,
Okay.
not at all. Not at all, and yeah. And we work very, very hard to work with all of our children. Just when they make a mistake, we work to fix it, we work to remedy it, and that's it. No matter who, what, when, where, why.
That was not there was no basis of my question that I was concerned about that. Okay, thank you, all set.
Reports.
So do I have a motion to accept the elementary school handbook as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500. Thank you.
Thank you, committee.
Thank you.
Wareham Middle School is up next.
Good evening.
Hi.
So the middle school does not have a large number of changes, starting with just telephone extensions, which are still subject to change, and updating to 23, 24, such as on the cover and throughout. Page 4, we have updated our staff and extensions to the extent that we are able to. We have switched out to the next year's calendar and updated our term schedule when the terms begin and end. On page 12, we have updated so that it is current with our opening of school every day. What it said was doors open at 7 and students arriving before 7:30 must report to the auditorium. That has been removed. We no longer have coverage for students to come into the building. We, starting at 7:15, have staff posted outside the building and students line up outside. On page 21, then, we have on our dress code, we have removed spaghetti strapped and shoulder straps of sleeveless tops that must be at least 2 inches wide. And we have added that there would be no snuggies or blankies worn. On page 27 and 28, we updated to add smartwatches where it says cell phones. It now says cell phones and smartwatches. We've updated our list of clubs. And under infractions, we have changed the word e-cigarettes to vaping device. And on page 44, we have added some items to number 10, which includes a description of possible weapons for which there are consequences of bringing to school. Questions?
April?
So much like Ms. Chandler had mentioned, just because there hadn't been something there, even though we can assume, obviously, that it's an expectation that when someone is being dismissed or a child is being picked up, not during an early dismissal or a regular dismissal, that they are presenting an ID, and I didn't see that language anywhere in the middle school handbook. So I was wondering if that was something similarly to what was in the elementary handbook, that we could have that just with, in the interest of child safety, that could be something that could be added language-wise as well.
Absolutely, and that is our practice. If you come to dismiss
I knew it was a
student,
practice, it's
yeah.
just not in the handbook, so much like, Bethany's counsel had pointed out, I think if we're gonna do it for one, we should have it across the board.
Absolutely.
Just in the interest of student safety.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Same question that I asked Dr. Chandler. Do you, and I remember, and I'm sure you do too, that Desi was at times over the years unhappy with some of the discipline and the demographics of the people who receive the discipline. What has the impact been? What has the impact been of those citations? And do you feel that the discipline at the middle school is demographically blind?
To the furthest extent it can be, absolutely.
What does that mean?
That nothing's perfect, but I think that in terms of administration, it is. Administration looks at what happened, what the offense was, and goes through, we refer to the handbook all the time. This is where we are. And we frequently, almost always, consult with one another. Mr. LaFever, Mrs. Cote, and I will, especially if it's a very serious case, will absolutely consult with one another as to what's the most appropriate form of discipline. So we kind of have a way to check ourselves as well.
Just depending on the nature of the incident, as compared to not as a basis of this not having anything to do with the student, him or herself.
Right, right.
Okay. So how did you handle it when Desi essentially asked you to justify the fact that certain demographics were more likely to be disciplined than others?
We looked at it really more holistically, that we wanted to improve our culture and climate so that discipline was less of an issue in middle school, and we've been successful at that for quite some time.
I know you have.
And so that probably was our best and biggest response, is to just look at what is it like to be in the middle school and how can we make it better.
So it sounds like just by improving the overall culture in the middle school, you made the problem go away without actually accommodating their desire to have it not be blind to demographics. Is that I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that a fair statement?
I guess that's what happened. I'm sure that I believe it's blind, because I'm trying to think of any example in the past years where we would have changed anything based on a student's demographics, and I cannot.
Thank you.
Joyce?
So in the elementary handbook, there were some changes to discipline, and in the high school there are more. So this is a question for you, I guess, and for the superintendent. Is the discipline language between handbooks consistent and similar?
It will be, after I do my presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion to accept the middle school handbook as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500. Thank you, and I know you weren't at the recognition ceremony the other night, but I would say congratulations on your years of service to Wareham, and we wish you a great, happy retirement.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
Thank you for everything.
Congratulations.
I just want to say Sandy is one of the reasons that I became a sub at Wareham Middle School, between her and Kim Bergamini, so.
Mr. Palladino, the high school handbook, you're up next.
Thank you. So some common themes, you'll see that we have some changes based on dates. We have changed our core values and beliefs, now replacing that with a vision of the graduate. Obviously, we have some changes to the school year calendar. We also, this year, moved our start time to 7:25, where we allow students in the building, so we wanted that to be reflected in the handbook. We have a little change to the late pass procedures, where the students don't need to see the dean. We added a little bit of a menu in regards to if students need replacement or repairs done to the Chromebooks, just so they know what they will have to pay and will be charged. Phys ed department really wanted to get rid of the students wearing the slides or shoes that are not conducive to physical activity. So we highlighted that the students must be wearing athletic sneakers to participate in phys ed. The jewelry issue really isn't an issue anymore. It was an issue 10 years ago, so we got rid of that. I think it was Mr. Bergioli that alluded to we were getting new boilers, so the heavy jackets may not be needed, and we're really looking forward to that. Not only not being in the handbook, but not being needed. And so we got rid of that and just kept the language on the gloves or the blankets, which can be a problem, but it hasn't been in the last year or two. We added some pieces to what cannot be allowed in school or at functions, also the vape pens, making sure that's there. It's in multiple places, but we felt that should be there. Changes to procedure, if a student is being dealt with from a disciplinary standpoint. We moved the deans throughout the building. We tried that last year, worked out really well. Traditionally, we had them in room 120. It was kind of a suite, and all of them were in there, but we felt like spreading them out throughout this whole school was best for the students. So there's not like a central location, so we kind of got rid of that in the room 120. It still says dean's office. As you heard from Joan, you're going to hear an awesome presentation on all of the 37H disciplines, so I'll save that for her. We also removed, in regards to some procedure, when students are given an in-school suspension, we took out number 5. Again, the dean's office has been moved. It used to be right next to ALS, or the in-school suspension room, and that, now they're spread out, so we just have them report right to the in-school suspension. Again, more language on discipline that Joan will talk to you about in regards to long-term, short-term suspensions. And so I'm going to jump down to the exciting discussion about work permits. And I am excited that it's going to be located at the high school now. Students are going to be at the high school to get work permits. I always found it to be awkward, especially when the school department was on the 3rd floor of Town Hall. And people would get lost, and then they'd figure out where it is. This is going to be really nice because we're going to have it in the guidance office, and the students can get their work permits. We also are going to have a school year, a calendar year secretary, excuse me, who is also trained. So not only is the school year secretary in guidance going to be trained, we have already trained our school year secretary, I'm sorry, our full year secretary, calendar secretary. So we'll have double coverage, so that's going to be great for our students that are looking to work. Specifically, most of them are looking in the summertime to work. We took off students being involved in in the field trips. The name actually goes to the principal secretary 1 week ahead of time. We like to get that out to the staff so they know who's going. So if there's a concern, we can get them off the list. Laboratory policy, we adjusted the times, but we also have the e-hall pass system, which is awesome. We can track our students when they're out of the classroom and run reports. Then we went through and adjusted the clubs that we are no longer offering and made sure to add the clubs we are offering, and that's on page 45. And then the last piece that we have is we just put a link to the Title IX, and the link there is at the bottom of the description about the federal and state law on harassment. So those are the proposed changes for the Wareham High School handbook, and I'll certainly entertain any questions you may have.
April?
Again, just for dismissal purposes of, students that are unable to, drive themselves out of the building. I didn't see any language where an ID of someone, I know that we get buzzed in and you have to sign in at the office to sign your student out, but just to have the language in the handbook.
I believe there is language, but if there's not, I'll make sure there is, just so we...
I didn't see it, but just if it's going to be consistent, like I said, just that way it's...
I agree. And that is the practice, obviously, as you know.
Oh, I've always known it was the
You
practice.
don't get past Miss Munson without,
Oh, you definitely
without an ID. But we'll make sure, I'll make sure we replicate the language from the elementary and middle school. If it's not in there, that is procedure, and it should be illustrated.
Thank you.
Scott, somewhere, I'm looking for the exact page, but it said that in-school suspension is not considered a short-term suspension. Is that what we're saying, or is that what DESI also says?
That's, I believe, what we both say.
Okay, so we're on the same page with DESI. So an in-school suspension does not count as a suspension on...
No, it does count as a suspension as far as, but it's a, we'll have to double-check that, but it is a suspension.
For DESI purposes, an in-school is a suspension?
They track them both.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, they
that's what I
track them
thought.
both, just
So,
like-
so when it says in-school suspension is not a short-term suspension, what does that mean?
What page are you on? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking, I just read it and I lost it.
I can probably pull.
33, I think?
The title says in-school suspension.
Okay.
In bold. It's right after one of your changes under...
Oh, you know what? I have it in the change sheet.
32, I think. It mentions short-term suspension, long-term suspension.
In-school suspension for less than 10 days shall not be considered a short-term suspension.
Page 3 in your change.
My change doc. Got it.
The paragraph starts with at the discretion of the principal.
All right, I'm on it. Yeah, I was going to say, Joan might clarify all that for you in a few minutes,
Okay.
and we can adjust that.
Yeah, so one way or another, whether it is or isn't, it's just as long as we can be consistent in our language.
Fair enough. That's a good point.
Any other questions, Jeff?
I do think, though, if I can just touch on
Sure.
that, I think it's in comparison to, it's less than 10 days shall not be considered a short-term suspension. And then if it's an in-school suspension of more than 10 days, we really only use it, quite frankly, a day at most, sometimes just a period to, it's really not, I think the most we've ever used it is like 2 days. And it's really used more just period-wise.
I guess the question would be, is short-term suspension different from a regular suspension? Is there a...
There's long-term and short-term.
Right,
There
but
is
is a 1 day considered a short-term?
Yeah, because it doesn't say short is less than 10 days.
Less than 10 days.
Less than 10 days, and short or long is that you're off school premises.
Right, so
Right.
in-school suspension is not considered a short-term suspension,
Right. It's
which
'cause
means, but it is considered a suspension
it's a
going to DESI.
suspension.
DESI,
Right. It's an
DESI
in-school
tracks
suspension.
the in-school suspensions and the out-of-school.
Right.
That is correct.
I don't know why it's clarifying, saying that it's not a short, because it says, in-school suspension for less than 10 days shall not be considered a short-term suspension. Well, I guess what they're saying there, it's not a short-term suspension, because a short-term suspension means that you're off school grounds.
And that's
In
not-
school, you're not off school grounds, you're in the building.
That's not new language, but we can certainly do, that language has been in there for a long time. We can delete,
No, I believe it, but you understand my question.
Oh, yeah, it's
Okay.
it's confusing, absolutely.
kind of contradictory, but it's language that's been in there for a long time, which doesn't mean it's right.
Okay. Jeff?
It does seem to me that we should come up with a different term than suspension for something that happens in school.
Unfortunately, DESI doesn't see it that way, but I agree 100% with you.
Anyway, by the way, there were a couple of trivial typos. I assume someone is going to go through
There'll
this.
be- Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
So has the high school ever been cited for the demographics of its discipline? And
No, not anymore, but he said, have we ever been?
that's correct.
Yes.
Could you describe the nature of those citations and how, just as I asked Sandy, how it impacted your policies as it pertains, if it did?
So we were cited based on special ed and students of multi-race, which ironically, there were quite a few that when they identified, they actually counted towards both. And it mainly the stem from our TLC program and the number of discipline issues that come out of that program, especially when you have 3 to 4 classrooms a period running in that program. So it was, it certainly was difficult. We were very proactive, and we hired a behavioralist, which I thought was a great move that allowed us to kind of have someone that was hands-on versus a dean who was more disciplinary in nature. So that's, and then we also were able to bulk up a little bit with another social worker that was assigned specifically to those students. So those were some proactive approaches that we took that we are definitely seeing the benefit of hiring those folks to deal with that. And then this year, we are working with a program called ESS, Effective School Solutions, that's actually supporting us with therapists to work with those students. So we've got a lot of nice wraparound support for those programs, and we're obviously seeing the results, and I think we'll even see better results as we continue to maintain the normalcy that we've had over the last 2 years since the pandemic.
So what I hear you saying, and I like it, is that there's more emphasis now on modifying aberrant behavior than simply punishing aberrant behavior.
Right. Oftentimes when you punish with a suspension, it's like a reward. You might have a situation where it's a single parent at home who has to go to work, so now the kid has run-of-the-mill at home, can play video games, watch Netflix, whatever. That's why, going back to in-school suspension, that's an effective tool, because the kid has access to their curriculum, to their schoolwork, and they're not home freelancing on their own. So it's a really effective tool, and we've got a great in-school suspension supervisor, Marge Rakowski, that does a great job for us there. But we don't, to answer your other part of your question, honestly, we don't look at demographics. I mean, as far as...
Oh, but DESI does.
I understand DESI does, but my thing is, I ask my deans to be consistent. I don't care who the kid is, I don't care who their parent is, I don't care if parents are on school committee. All right, everyone gets the same discipline. And not that we have issues with school committee parents.
I can attest that they are absolutely fair, even if you're a school committee
It just,
child.
you can't like lead like that. I mean, we have to be consistent. If you're not consistent, you're not fair. The great thing about the handbook is it's a guide for us to be consistent and to be fair, and we try to be creative when we can, as all of my colleagues do in the other schools. We try and use restorative justice whenever possible. And, you know, I know it's a public meeting and it's being filmed, but I'd love to share some of the things that we've done that have been very creative, that kept students in school, but also got our message across, you know, because part of discipline is coaching kids. All right, we're coaching them to be better citizens, not only in school. They're in school for like 13% of the year. We're coaching them to be good citizens for 87% of the time they're not in the building. We're coaching them to try and make them to be young adults who can handle, hopefully, school or the workforce or the military, whatever it is they're going to do. So we really try to be corrective in our nature, but also not rubbing their nose in it, making it a learning opportunity. And one of my favorite lines is, we don't want this action to define the rest of your high school career. You know, learn from it, grow from it, but don't make the same mistake again. That's when I get, there's two things that frustrate me with discipline. When the kid is consistently making the same mistake, and when something is premeditated. Those are my two pet peeves.
But bottom line is, at the moment, you're good with DESE.
We're good with DESE. We have a great group of deans that do an awesome job, and it's great to be off their radar in that respect. But again, I'm not going to change the way we do discipline because we're afraid to discipline students that have IEPs or students that are multi-race. We're treating everyone the same as I think the school committee would want us to. There's no, you know, special circumstances where, you know, if you're in the TLC room and you have an IEP and you do X, and this is the result. If it gets to our level, this is the result.
All good, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other, Joyce?
So I know that you reviewed the handbook changes with the school council. Do you have a committee of staff members?
I do, thank you. I should have brought that up. I was trying to be efficient tonight and get to the play, but thank you, Joyce,
Oh,
because
sorry.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. So we have a great school council. We have a student advisory council who you've heard a few times that we've spent quite a few hours on this. I have an advisory rep group that I meet with every month, and I'll be meeting with again on Tuesday, and we spend, this is, I know you're going to be surprised, this is a hot button issue, especially dress code. We spend a lot of time talking about that and trying to explain what we can do, what we can't do. And then we have a group of staff members, I believe it's about 12 staff members that are part of our site-based management group that actually went through this soup to nuts and got just about to the end, and they've got one more meeting, so we'll put those changes on for next year's handbook, for the 24-25 handbook. So a lot of hands, a lot of eyes, and then my secretary, Stacy, putting it all together. So it's quite a team, very collaborative process, and Joyce, you're part of that as school council, so thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate all of their efforts and their advice.
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 500.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the district handbook.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello?
Hey, Joan.
So the Policy Review Committee was pretty busy this year because there are a lot of policies that we went through that have to be changed in the district handbook. So although there's, 1 1/4 pages of changes, a lot of those just have to be updates from the policies that we did. So the minor things, the cover pages, dates, and things like that will be changed. The table of contents, I didn't even touch that yet because there's so many different components. That will be updated once the handbook is approved and we add in all the new policies and so forth. And then, of course, the pages would be updated. So when you look on page 6 of what I sent out, tracking the changes, I just added in the actual Mass General Law for student records in case somebody wanted to reference that. It wasn't there, so I thought that was helpful. Page 8 and 9 is just a name change for that particular office. Page 10, we had a discussion at our admin meeting about appearance. And depending on your grade level, your school, dress appearance is different. So rather than have one item in the district handbook, we felt it was better handled at each school level, because then each school could really gear the appearance section to the appropriate age. So we're going to delete it from the district handbook. So that's a recommendation that we are making, and it will be handled in the school handbooks. On pages, so 11 through 16, there are some changes in the discipline law, as people have said, 37 3/4. So we had to add some language. So as you see, anything that's in yellow, from what I sent you, are the areas that we need to add. And once you approve this, I've sent this wording to the principals to make sure that it will be updated in their handbooks as well. So they may not have reflected it yet because we had to go through this meeting. So as I said, I went through, I took out the language that we had to replace it with. So you'll see in the various sections, it starts with student discipline, it goes through the suspensions. I think as we clarified, the in-school suspension is really because it was in school instead of the short term is more outside of school. We had to also try to be sure that we try to do as many alternatives before we suspend. I know the schools have done a great job of coming up with those things. In the past couple of years, we've added social workers to the schools who really work closely with students on some of the issues that they're facing. And I think a lot of that, along with the BCBAs, we're really gearing towards what the behaviors are and trying to stop the behaviors before they escalate. I know schools have Friday detention. When I was helping out, when Mrs. Pont was out, we had lunch detention. These are things that they've tried to put in place, restorative justice, to try to have different alternative things that we're doing and not just go right to suspension. So I know all the schools are working on that. So the discipline does go through, as I said, through page 16. The meetings that the principal has to have, they really want to be sure that the parents are there, the students are there, they get a copy of what the charges are going to be. There is a right to appeal to the superintendent, so that language has been really clarified. So we go through, and there's some of the language is the same, whether it was, short-term suspension, long-term suspension. There's that hearing that takes place unless there's a reason where the student who's charged with a disciplinary offense may be removed temporarily from school before receiving the school due process. That's called the emergency removal. So we still have the option to do that. So those are basically the sections on discipline that we had to change based on the new section of the law. Let's see, on page 18 to 23, bullying prevention, that was updated, so we'll insert that new policy that you see there. That's why that whole section is yellow. We'll remove the old, insert the new. On page 23, we had suspension of bus privileges. That was just kind of plunked there, and I didn't feel that was the right spot for it. So I'm proposing that we move that to the end of the discipline section, because it's really about discipline. We talked about, on page 24, it's a policy update for hazing. So sometimes it said approved, and then the policy review committee had reviewed that, so I just changed it to say reviewed. So if somebody looked and said, well, that policy was approved in 2017, has it ever been looked at? You could look and see, yes, it was done in 2023. Page 26, discriminatory harassment. Title IX falls under this, which is another section that has been changed. So we have provided a link that actually brings you to a document that has all of the changes in Title IX. So it really goes into sexual harassment and what has to be done if a claim is brought. We have Title IX coordinators that are appointed in the school system, and they're going to have to go through training before this next school year on what they need to do as coordinators, and if an allegation is brought to them to do an investigation. Page 30 and 31 is just the medication policy that needs to be updated. Same with, on page 32, that particular policy. Page 38, there was superintendent name change that needed to be made. I'm also recommending that we add in on page 43, the child custody policy. Sorry, my computer went to sleep. Because it wasn't in here and I felt it was important. Which is, it's a short one. Beginning with the registration process, the school shall verify that each parent guardian has legal custody of a child. Dismissal of a child to an individual other than a parent or guardian will not be permitted unless a written notice of permission is provided by a parent or by a guardian having legal custody. State-issued photo identification, we all brought that up tonight, of the individual will be requested at the time of dismissal. A parent guardian claiming custody will be obligated to provide legal evidence to the school principal. So I felt that should be in the handbook so that it's clear about who's coming to dismiss a child, and it also takes into the concern you all had about that ID. I know as a principal, I always had it in my September newsletter, but now we have it, it'll be in our district handbook. It is a policy that we have on our district website, and now will be reflected in the schools as well. Page 43 was just an update on the concussion policy, same with 45, Corey. 48 to 50 is update on policy. 53, as Dr. Chandler said, is an update on the entrance age. 55 is a policy update. 57 through 60 is a policy update. We deleted internet safety. It's incorporated now into empowered digital use. 59 and 60 is a policy update. Page 67, we are looking to add in public complaints. That was a new policy that you had approved through the Policy Review Committee. So we're looking to insert that policy here. That's why on your paper it's in blue, because it's something that's new. Page 68, policy update. 74, with staff ethics conflicts, standardized testing. Page 75 was the policy update. 76 is a policy update. On the back of my sheet at least, transportation of persons requiring medical attention is a policy update. 77 to 79 was at school, the health and wellness policy. That was a huge change, so we're just going to delete the old and insert the new. And then at the last few pages, we'll update the school committee roles, all of the positions, Title IX, 504, once they're posted and approved, and then the school calendar. So those are the changes that we're looking to do for the district handbook.
So then, Joan, is it your role to make sure that everyone else is aligned with those as well?
Yeah,
especially
so
about the 37 and
The
3/4,
37,
3/4.
H and 3/4, and the Title IX, as I said, I sent that to them preliminary. So once we go through tonight's meeting, they'll go back and they'll reflect those changes.
Thank you.
So I did send out an email to all the principals saying I was doing the district handbook, if they had anything that they felt we needed to add in. And that's how we had that great conversation about appearance and dress code. So yes, we have discussed it.
This one?
I just wanted to also indicate that the staff, it goes through a extensive mandated training, and all of the updates have been incorporated in that mandated training. So they'll be aware, everyone will be aware, and that is vetted every year with lawyers, so we know that we're on the right page and we're following the law. So 37 and a half, H is one of the ones that the lawyers took time with, also Title IX. Those were the two big ones this year. So so everyone within the district will be aware.
Thank you. Joyce?
I guess it's not really a question. I just want to say, the way that you've stated the dress code in the district handbook makes so much sense. I'm so glad that you did that, because it always
you.
bothered me that it was different everywhere. I mean, I understand why it's different for the different schools, obviously for different ages, but so that so much better reflects. And your document makes it clear that I understand why a paper document should be available, but to be able to include links in it, it just allows you to include so much more information that is so much easier to be updated.
Yeah, I think there has to be both. There has to be online that, families can access, but we do have to have hard copies, because there are families that don't
Oh, absolutely.
have internet, they can't print it off, so.
Right,
yeah.
right.
But
No,
yeah, I like the links because they can go right there.
And is it true to say that, and maybe I asked this before, that some of these changes to the handbook regarding discipline are things that are already in place? It's just updating.
It's updating, but as Dr. Schwam said, it's, part of the law has changed, so that's why we had to update the section of the law. We had to
Okay.
include that.
Okay.
But as far as restorative justice and alternatives, yeah, the schools have been doing that right along.
Right, right. Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So do we have a motion to accept the handbook? Oh, I'm sorry. Question, sorry.
Joan, to whom does the district handbook get distributed?
Well, it's available to all families in the district. Is that your
I
question?
understand the word availability, but is it actually given to them electronically with copies as requested, or how is?
Yeah, so I know as a principal, I always had copies in my building, so it would be printed off.
But did you wait for a parent to request one, or did you automatically send it to them electronically?
It was automatically sent because on the sign-off sheet that parents have to sign, it says I have received the school handbook as well as the
Okay.
district handbook.
Okay,
So it's both,
It has equal status with the school handbook.
yes.
Okay. Regarding bus privileges, how often are bus privileges withdrawn?
Well, typically, bus privileges means you've done something in error. It depends on what you've done, how many times you have done it. So there are times that bus suspensions have to be given to students.
And it's the decision of the school principal?
School principal or their team. So it could be an assistant principal who's handling the bus discipline, but I know as a team, they discuss it. Again, they're trying to see if there's alternative things they have to do. Sometimes, like with our students who may be on the spectrum, they do social stories in order to teach the students what was wrong and better choices to do. So it's a learning.
I get that, and I'm not, you may not have this off the top of your head, so a round number would be fine. But at this moment in time, how many students would you say have lost their bus
I
privileges?
don't have that information anymore because I'm not at the school level, and it doesn't come to me.
We still have, with your approval, I assume you don't know the answer to that question. Could we ask the principals how many students won from the high school? Sandy?
More than one.
One's off the bus currently. One's off the bus currently, please.
Got it. Now, more than one, less than 10?
We're talking about students who were removed from the bus
Yes.
this year?
Yes. No, at this moment,
present
at this moment in time.
I don't think we have anyone right now.
Anybody, okay?
I think I have one.
I've gotten my question answered. Thank you.
So I think we had, who had made, do we have a motion to accept the district handbook? Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Thank you.
Thank you.
Busy evening, Mr. Palladino. You're back up, I guess, with the winter sports season and new league updates.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me up here a few times.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
I think that might mean I might not be at the next meeting. So I just want to start, and I believe Ed's going to be joining us momentarily, but I want to start by just thanking Ed and his secretary, Sandy Barboza. I think they do a great job of identifying where all the expenses are coming from and itemizing those and doing a great job of the spreadsheet. And I also love reading the report. This winter was really a special season, not just for basketball. Obviously, we think of boys basketball, and thank you for recognizing them last meeting. That was great, and they really enjoyed that and spoke of it the next day in school, and they appreciated the picture. And they're a great group of kids, but, it goes beyond basketball. The track teams are really working hard and having some great seasons and a lot of PRs. where the students are getting their best scores, their best times, their best jumps, throws, et cetera. And then the girls' basketball is a very, very young team, but they have a lot of young kids that I think in a few years we'll see, no pun intended, some rebounding going on there with their record. Cheerleading is competing and doing really well. So it's been a great winter. I don't want to read all the accolades. You've already read those, and the record, overall winning record, and a good number of students participating with only a limited number of sports offered in the winter, and obviously capped off by a state championship. You get one of those every 15 years, so I'm really enjoying this one. I was there in 10, but not as the principal, and Coach Pajoli obviously was the coach. That was a great group of kids, and this is just a great group of kids. And the scary part is they're all juniors, so it could be another unbelievable year next year, not to put too much pressure on them. But so, you know, they all do community service, and what I'm always impressed with is the GPA, 87.5. I know it's not 97, but it's 87.5, and that includes, you know, the freshman teams, you know, JV team, and obviously the varsity team. So I'm really proud of the students for their not just being athletes, but truly being student athletes. So those are the accolades, and then when we get into the funding and all the costs, you can see it broken down, and they do a great job of really breaking it down, and even breaking it down as far as looking at the cost per athlete, which I think is outstanding. So I did spend a lot of time with Ed on this, and certainly would entertain any questions you might have on this report.
Any questions on this report? Joyce?
Sorry, I don't have any questions. I won't ask you any questions. All I'll say is, you talk about numbers of kids, and sometimes we hear, oh, we don't know if they're going to be able to have a team, and then they do, because the kids end up coming out. And so
Right.
the numbers, and the track numbers are high, so I'd love to see that. And, oh my God, what else? Oh, yeah, so the cost. So I looked at the cost, and then I went back to last winter, and I thought, we all know everything costs more now.
Oh, my gosh.
But they're doing a good job of managing that, because it didn't cost that much more. So
Right.
not as much as I would have expected. So, you know, we talked about user fees and going another year without user fees, so that's kind of why I just looked at the total cost for the whole season, and, yeah, it was definitely not that much more, not as much as I expected. So, good job to you and Ed and everyone else who's,
Hopefully we can keep that going.
thank you.
April?
So I see on the cover report that you had 4 participants that were students that participated in, like, basically a school choice type of sport because they weren't
Cooperative
offered-
team.
Cooperative
Not school
team.
choice, cooperative team.
Okay, so I know that we've done that in the past where we had a joint team, like it
Right.
was Wareham Carver hockey
Sure.
for some time, and I know now it's spliced between, I believe, 3 teams, like Middleborough
Yeah,
Carver
exactly.
hockey.
Yes.
So going forward, obviously, because we are in a new league, do you anticipate still needing to co-op certain teams, or do you think that there might be higher interest in individual, in those particular sports where we would be able to have, our own team and not have to be co-opted?
I think the only team we co-op with is ice hockey, and this year we had one person that wanted to swim, and we co-opted with Old Rochester for that swimming. I don't see switching leagues, all of a sudden the kids come out of the woodworks. Matter of fact, I don't think it will change our participation rate at all. It will change our success rate because we're playing schools that are similar or smaller than us, but ice hockey is a specialized sport, and it's very, very difficult to come out in 8th grade and decide you're going to play hockey. I've got some familiarity with it. My kid's been skating since he's 3, and he's going to be playing at the high school level
Oh, yeah,
next
no,
year.
my stepsons
Yeah.
went through the Viking hockey program.
There you
but
go.
I was just curious because I know it was a pretty robust program for quite some time. So to see the number drop down to 2 when we used to have, well, this said 2 for the boys hockey and then 1 for girls.
Correct.
But I just hadn't seen that, the numbers be that low for hockey in quite some time, especially when we have, Gateway and the
I'm
Shark
not sure if they have
program.
Gateway anymore. I think the demise of the high school program, from what I understand, has been the Gateway program is really no longer in full effect as it once was. So you don't have the feeder program, you don't have the athletes coming through. And then, like you said, you have to jump in with the Sharks on the Cape or with the program out of New Bedford. So it's tough, but, you know, I'm excited that we're keeping it alive in hopes that at some point, maybe we can bring it back. But it was to the point where, when we were the host team, it was just costing us too much money. So this was really the best bet for us from a fiscal standpoint. Carver had more kids than us. They didn't want to be the host, so we reached out to Middleborough. They were looking for players, and we're excited to be able to really have a solid team, to the point where the team actually went to the playoffs this year for the first time in a few years. So it was a really exciting team, and the girls as well were really good. I had a chance to see both teams play this year, and it was great to see them be competitive. But I do hope, to your point, that we see maybe that fluctuation change, and we get more hockey players. And again, I'm biased as an ex-hockey player, but I would love to see more kids coming in, and maybe us being the host team at some point. It's going to have to stay co-op for a while, but it all depends on what you have for a feeder program coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jeff?
So, the 80, let me get the number correct. The GPA for the basketball team bothered me a little.
Remember, freshmen are mixed in, and there's some of those are 8th graders that are new to the high school. So this is for the boys' basketball specifically, this is comprised of the freshmen, the JV, and the varsity. So it's not that 80, I can guarantee you the varsity team was high 80s.
Okay, great to know. I mean, that was 40 participants, so, which is obviously a lot of kids.
Right.
And if the average for 40 was 80, then there must have been some 70s in there, maybe even low 70s.
Yeah, 8th graders traditionally have a tough transition into the high school world.
But the bottom line is you're confident the varsity was high 80s.
I could get that for you if you want, but I am very confident I could get you an exact number. But I
That's
know the varsity offset the freshmen. Let me just put it that way. And when I say freshmen, I mean the 8th and 9th graders.
And you don't need to get it to me, I trust you. And of course, the girls' track boosted everybody.
They're going to give you a run for the money, Coach.
Oh, another pun. Nice.
They always have.
No pun intended. Again, that girls' spring track team is, boys are pretty good too from a GPA standpoint, but I think you might have some competition this year.
I've always had competition from girls' track, so I get it. It's a great competition to be a part of.
Yeah, it's not a bad
Dylan
problem.
humbles
You're
the
right.
boys' track team with his, so we're all right.
I'm good, thank you.
And regarding just the update for the league, is that,
Yes.
are we set to go?
We are set to go. Ed is wearing many hats these days, and there's not pretty much a week that goes by where he's not at a meeting either with our South Coast Conference or our Mayflower Conference. He's getting a little stressed out because you have a pretty good thing in the South Coast Conference with not having to get too many non-league games, and was one of my concerns. So he's having a tough time filling schedules. He's working harder than he's ever had to work for the fall schedules to try and get 18 games or matches. It's not easy, and a lot of schools have agreements with other schools that they have like a tradition, like, I'm sure you've all, Jeff, I'm sure you have it with maybe Carver with tennis or something along those lines. You have these traditions that you keep in place, so a lot of schools just don't have the capacity to add extra games. So he's working through it. It's going to require more travel, and you're going to see, unfortunately, the transportation line items increase because we're going to have to go a little further away to get non-league games. But I think the benefit will be we're trying to still stay within the range of our school size so that it is still competitive. So it's going to take a little while. And then I hope what happens is he'll create those relationships that I talked about that many of the coaches have, and we'll continue to do that. Make it a tradition, home and home.
Sitting here as a coach, I can tell you your analysis is correct. I mean, I think there's only like 3 other schools that are even going to be playing tennis compared to, I don't know, 6 or 7 or whatever, 8. So yes, filling up that non-league schedule is going to be a lot of work for Ed, and I will try and help him do that.
But I think as you get going in the league and you have, again, these, like when I was coaching, I'd always play Durfee, and we had an agreement because they only had they basically had 2 teams in the league. It was the Big Three back then. So we would help them out and guarantee them a home and home. So you get those relationships going. It's just, we're starting from scratch with everything as far as trying to get those non-leagues. And, we still have, the competitive teams can still stay non-league with some of the South Coast Conference teams, so you still have those relationships. But it is a lot of work up front, and it's a different conference. It's not as, it's a lot different than what we're used to. But we'll manage, we'll get through. We'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is the Director of Finance report.
Good evening. Tonight, I just have one item for you for the report, and it is a review of the hourly rates for positions that we are not in a collective bargaining agreement or don't have individual contracts. So we like to have this rate sheet so that it's standardized and everybody is aware of what the rate is, and it also supports our payroll documentation. So the only changes that were recommended are highlighted. I believe they're probably highlighted in yellow on your sheet. The Director of Food Service requested that the rate for substitute cafeteria worker be increased to $16 per hour from $15.50. And he also requested that the cafeteria monitor position be increased 50 cents to $15.50 per hour. And this is to be competitive and to be able to hire substitutes for those positions. The next change is an addition of a substitute custodian rate. We didn't have that documented on this list, and it has come up over this past school year that if we were to employ a substitute custodian, what would the rate be? So we wanted to make sure that it is on this rate. So again, we have something to look back to document through the payroll. So we set that at, recommending that at $16 per hour, the same as the substitute cafeteria rate. None of the other rates were recommended for changes.
Excuse me. Mr. Roderick says he's outside and the door is locked.
I told him we're done. I told him he can go home.
Oh, okay.
So, and finally.
Sorry, Kristen.
That's okay. Finally, the next rate that we wanted to include on this sheet is the driver's education instructor rate, which had not been included in the past. I'm not sure if you recall when we had the discussion to increase the driver's education fees, that rate came up. The lead instructor had discussed it briefly at that meeting. So we wanted to, again, put it down on paper so that we would have something, again, to support the payroll. From what my understanding is that rate years ago had been set at the curriculum rate, which is stated in the teacher's contract in the collective bargaining agreement. And it had started at $32 an hour, I believe. And in the past 16 years, per the driver's education instructor supervisor, it has not increased, it has not kept pace with that extra duty pay rate that is listed in the collective bargaining agreement. So we worked together, and coming up in the recommendation was to make a step structure similar to what the coaches have in the collective bargaining agreement, so that years 1 and 3 would remain unchanged at $32 an hour. And she thought that anyone with over 5 years' experience as a driver's education instructor should, recommended that they should get paid the curriculum rate. And so that was inserted in a midpoint, years 4 and 5. So we have years 1 and 3, $32 an hour, year 4 and 5, $34.50 per hour, and more than 5 years, which is the curriculum rate, which currently this school year is $37.15, and it will increase to $38.18 next year. So that is a recommendation for the driver's ed instructors. So I will take any questions, and I just ask for a vote at this time.
Any questions? Joyce?
So the driver's ed, everyone is paid the $32 an hour now? Is that
Currently,
true?
yes,
So this-
everyone is paid. There are 3 instructors, from what I understand, 2 of which have worked hours this year.
Mm-hmm. So these new rates will go into effect on July 1st?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And my other question, even though it's not a change that you're proposing, was about the substitute teacher rate. So that is, we changed that, I don't know, a few years ago, to reflect minimum wage. So we don't know, minimum wage could change, right, January 1st, but we don't know what that would be. Up until now, we've known what it was on like a
Correct.
5-year
It was.
schedule, right? So this was the last year of that 5 years. So I guess we'll address that when the time comes,
Yeah,
if minimum wage
and I
increases.
can also find out what, other districts are at. I know that the 120 is pretty much in the ballpark where other districts are, but at the time, when we have that discussion, I can have that data for you.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Jeff?
So, a couple of questions. Have you had a chance to quantify the impact of this, assuming it's approved?
For the driver's education rate?
No, for the whole thing.
For the whole thing. We currently, the substitute custodian, we don't have anyone right now, and it's sort of on an, as-needed basis, and it just is helpful that if somebody were to apply or come, I think we had a situation at one of the buildings a few months ago that we wanted to know, okay, what do we offer this person if we have someone come in for a long-term absence? So we really don't have any much utilization for the substitute custodian. Honestly, I have not calculated the impact of the substitute cafeteria worker, but I can certainly work with Mr. Russo to see what that impact would be. For driver's education, I did take a look at the number of hours that have been worked year to date. So if this were put into place for this school year, what it would look like. And we have one instructor who has worked 401 hours, and another instructor has worked 234 hours year to date through the last payroll. So they would fall in 2 different steps, but if this were put into effect, again, for this school year, based on those hours, it would affect the driver's education program by approximately $2,500. And I will say, with driver's ed and with the cafeteria, both of those programs are fee-based. So they're not going to be relying on the local budget to make up that difference.
Is it fair to say that none of these positions have benefits?
I do not believe that, well, it really depends, because the driver's ed instructors would, because they are teachers in our system. So.
So they're already benefited
Right,
in a
right.
different way, for a different reason?
Correct. But some of them, if they were, I would say, the longer-term subs, based on how long, or the permanent intermittent subs, based on how many hours they work, we would comply with the laws that state what you have to pay for benefits. But certainly a as-needed per diem, a secretary sub, a nurse sub that might come in for a day here or there wouldn't receive any benefits that I'm aware of.
Do we have maybe it's better directed to you than to Kristen, do we have a policy with respect to when a person is offered a contract?
I don't know if we have a policy. I mean, the practice is if they are on a regular basis, a daily or weekly employee that's reoccurring.
A regular full-time employee?
Right, or part-time.
Or part-time?
Right. But many of these positions here are, as needed.
Right.
Yeah.
So any regular full-time or part-time employee who is not in an association, in a union, is automatically offered a contract?
Correct.
Why is that?
Just so everybody understands what the agreement is.
But we could have an employee handbook, which would tell them exactly what the terms of their employment are.
But it outlines pay and if there's sick days involved or, any other benefits.
It's a unique industry in that respect.
April?
So my question was, in regards to driver's ed, that whole department is self-funded, correct?
Correct.
So do their salaries come out of their fee schedule as well?
Yes, so
Okay.
there's a revolving fund for driver's ed, and in the revenues that go into it are the fees that are collected for the services that they provide. And the expenses would be the hourly wages of the instructors. Fuel gets charged when the instructors fuel up their cars at the town gas depot. That fuel gets back charged to driver's ed, and any repairs on the cars. So it is fully funded at this point through that revolving fund. And currently, there's approximately, I believe, about just under $26,000 in that revolving fund. But I'll be reporting on revolving funds
They were
next,
looking
so.
for another vehicle, though, correct?
I think that she had discussed that there might be a need for another vehicle. I think the vehicles, I just looked at this, the age, 2017 perhaps, were the two vehicles. I think there's currently two vehicles that they use, and it may be getting time to start looking for another vehicle. I believe, yes, they were 2017. One had more miles than the other because that tended to be the car. Here it is. Two cars are both 2017. There's a Chevrolet, and that's used the most, and this is at the time, probably a couple months ago when we discussed this. That has 90,000 miles on it, and a Nissan had about 38,000 miles on it at the time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So do I have a motion to accept the hourly wages as outlined in our handout?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. Thank you.
Thank you.
See that Mr. Rodriguez has entered the building. I don't know if you'd like to address us? That's okay.
Mr. Palladino said he did a great job, so. I apologize. My grandsons were pitching one after another. I'm sorry. I thought I was going to get here on time, but I try not to miss that if I can.
No problem.
I apologize. Anybody have any questions or anything? Obviously, the highlight of the winter was the boys' basketball team. It was a lot of fun. One of the comments I would like to make about the boys' basketball team was they represented Wareham very, very well. It was one of the best teams we've had as far as overall attitude with officials, other teams, coaches, and I was really pleased with that. It was an outstanding season, and the crowds were great. They were very much under control, very respectful. I think the whole situation represented Wareham very, very well. So.
Amen. Yeah, I think, I love hearing what you just said, and I think Steve deserves a tremendous amount of credit for making that happen, because it doesn't happen automatically.
Well, Steve is, I mean, I don't want to say this the wrong way, he's come a long way in certain areas, and that's one of his strongest points right now, and I'm really pleased with that. I know being a former coach and somebody up here coaches, that's hard sometimes, and he's got them, they love the sport, they're working hard, but they act like gentlemen, and that's what I was very, very pleased with.
And we just asked, one of the last things we asked was about the update for the Mayflower League, and we understand that maybe non-league might be
Well, I'm going to two meetings at the same time. Like today I was with South Coast Conference, yesterday I was with the Mayflower, and it's all set with there may be, they're trying to probably change. It's a predominantly vocational league, so to speak. So what they're trying to do, we lost Bishop Connolly and West Bridgewater that were in our division. So now that causes us to have 4 less games. So
What happened to West Bridgewater?
They went to South Coast Conference.
You're kidding.
No.
They were trying to get in for a few years.
Move your feet, lose your seat.
So, yeah, so I would just switch. So what happens is, that's okay, whatever, but we lost 4 games, and we don't have that many to begin with. So now, the last 3 weeks were brutal for me trying to get, 16 games in all these sports. It was not easy.
Wow.
Boys basketball is coming up. They're a totally different entity. They're going independent, but in their level, we're looking for good teams. So it's not a lot. I can't do that with some of our other sports. The reason we got out of South Coast Conference was it was too strong for a lot of our teams. So now I'm trying to figure out teams that could play us. It's worked out. Soccer's need a few more. I just filled the last 2 volleyball today, filled the last 2 field hockey yesterday, and there's a couple more for soccer. And I'm hoping that once we've established these relationships, we'll continue to play them on a year-in and year-out basis, and it'll be okay. Boys basketball is going the other way. As you know, they're going to Florida. Thank you for approving that. And, they're playing Dartmouth a couple of times. They got invited to a big tournament in Springfield, which you might have gone before, Kevin. They only invite the elite teams to that, and it's been great. So, and I'm excited for that, and I'm excited in general for the whole league as far as I think we'll be more competitive with a lot of teams. And the only problem is pain in the neck for me a little bit, trying to get all these games, but once I think we get it through 1 year, it'll be okay.
Well, way to take one for the teams, Mr.
Way
Rodriguez.
to take one for the team. Well, I did this when I was in New Bedford, but again, I was like Steve, we were looking for the best team, so it's not as hard. We can't play those teams, so I'm trying to get teams that we can compete against, so.
April?
I do just want to also commend you on the new football coach. He has made his presence known to other sports.
Yes.
So he was at the track meet on Tuesday, and he was really helping and supporting, and even he was helping rate the long jump. He was really trying to connect with a lot of the kids, and I like to see that as a new coach coming in, and trying to build those relationships. So hopefully, some of these other sports that have, kids that have played one sport, like we had some kids this year in track that had normally played baseball in the spring and switched to track and have had some really big success for themselves. So it's nice to see some of the coaches really kind of crossing boundaries in their off season and trying to just make relationships with the kids. So, that goes to who you guys hire as coaches. So I think that's a great step in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Palladino and I, we thought he was the best choice. He's got a lot of energy. He wants to do a lot of things here, and that's what we're looking for. And he's in the building part of the day now, so he's getting to meet the other kids. And he was a former track coach, and so he said, "I'll go over there. I'll help out." He's going to be starting with the weight room now and everything. And we're trying to get more athletes that just play, instead of just basketball, for an example, play other sports. We're too small a school to just play one sport, and that's what. And we're hoping that he can do that to get us to that level. We've survived, but we really need a freshman JV type team to survive successfully. We've been surviving just on older kids, but then the younger kids got to step up in 8th and 9th grade and play against these 18-year-olds. It's not good. So we're hoping that he's going to get more kids, and we're going to start to see a JV freshman type program that'll help us in the future. And we're very pleased with who we hired so far.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Do you have any sense yet as to how receptive South Coast Conference will be to giving us non-league matches?
Well, yeah, they will. For an example, I'm trying to tread lightly with that, who we're playing. For example, boys basketball is independent. Volk still wants to play us. Old Rochester wants to play us. Bourne still wants to play us. We're in the Aponequid tournament. So I'm going by sport. In other words, our strongest sports, we're going to try to get the teams from the South Coast Conference. The teams that aren't as strong, we're going to try to go elsewhere.
Okay.
I think, in your case, I think you'll be able to get some matches for sure.
Okay.
I'm sure Rochester will want to play you again. I think Fayetteville will want to play you, and things like that. That's what we're trying to do. That's my job, to try to balance it out. My goal as an athletic director so that we have competitive games. We win 6-2 or we lose 6-2, not 10-0 and things of that nature. That's my goal.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sorry again, I
It's okay.
apologize for
No worries.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, superintendent's report is next.
All right, the only thing I have is in the superintendent's newsletter, the approval of bill and payroll warrants. So I ask for your approval of those warrants.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 500.
Thank you.
That might be the shortest superintendent's report in history. Very efficient.
Why does the payroll warrant go all the way back to March 11th?
I think that's a typo.
You just want to be even with your typo today.
That's called a typo.
Oh,
It's gotta be.
did we say as printed on the page, or did?
It is supposed to be 5.
Ah, okay.
511.
So let the record show.
No, not 511.
It has the same amount,
Yes,
too, as the
511.
bid.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Hey, that's your one mistake for the year.
It's a good thing it's almost over, Jamie. Start fresh on July 1st.
Okay, so next up, we have the school committee report, and first, we need to vote on the student travel policy.
Okay, if I may, this is the policy we discussed last week, at last week's meeting. And we talked about, one, putting in language around reoccurring fundraising. So I did put, you can see the first line, reoccurring fundraising activities need only be approved prior to its initial implementation. And then we also talked about being a little bit more specific of around the trips, and I added including but not limited to class field trips, school club field trips, and athletic trips. I don't know if that clearly states what we were looking for. That's what I was going for that, and I hope I got there. So that's for your consideration.
Move approval.
Wait a second.
Second.
Any questions?
I
Joyce?
just have one question. Could you give me an example of what a reoccurring fundraiser might be? Or maybe well, go ahead.
Well, what I think is if, there's a certain club has, the cookie fundraiser every year or something like that, the
Well,
first.
we don't approve fundraisers specifically, right?
You don't approve,
No, so
That's
somebody
like on a
comes to us
school
and they
level
wanna
or
go on a
principal
trip.
level.
Yeah, so we did talk about that a little bit because we said, the high school has more fundraising, so they have a fundraising coordinator, whatever it's called, right? But the elementary school doesn't do as much fundraising maybe, so they don't have a coordinator. But we don't approve fundraising. Right? I'm trying to think of any,
We like to hear that it exists.
yes.
But we don't- we don't per se approve it.
We always ask, will there be was there a fundraising opportunity for kids who maybe can't afford to go on a trip? But
So when did the line initial approval by the school committee is required before engaging students in fundraising activities? Didn't that exist already, that line?
Well, we
It
didn't
did.
have this policy, period, so it was presented to us as a new policy.
But I read that as initial approval of the trip by the school
I
committee.
agree.
Is required before they can engage in the fundraising.
That's the way I
I
read
see
it,
what you're
too.
saying, okay.
Yeah.
well, where are you reading that?
Third line, second line, yeah.
Second line. Initial approval.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Oh,
That we're approving the
initial approval by the school committee of the trip.
Not the fundraisers.
Right, so then it's up to the school
Oh,
or
okay.
whoever.
I was reading it wrong then. I thought that was saying the school committee has to approve fundraising
No.
activities.
No.
We do have a fundraising policy that sets out parameters for fundraising, but we don't approve
Okay.
individual
So
fundraisers. Yeah.
ignore that then.
Okay.
Take the line out.
All right, all right. I just don't want to make it more difficult for them.
Approve as amended.
Yeah,
First red line, yeah.
yeah.
So then do we have a motion to accept the amended student travel
So
policy?
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500.
Very
Thank you. And then next up, it talks about the superintendent evaluation, part 2. So we met last week to evaluate the superintendent. By contract, we must set the superintendent's compensation for the FY24 year before the end of this fiscal year. We met in executive session earlier this evening to do so and voted unanimously to accept a 2% increase as specified and required in the contract, plus a 0.75% cost of living adjustment. And as again, that was unanimous, so just notifying the superintendent and the public of that. Any other business, I would just add that at our next meeting, we will have committee assignments or reassignments, which includes subcommittees and union bargaining association assignments. So just think about those, what you're doing now, what you might want to do, what you have time for, et cetera, and we will discuss that in open session next week. Any other business? And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 500. Meeting is adjourned.